Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Fourth Density Podcast. I am very excited. This is my first interview, and I have a very special guest on. So I'd like to introduce Avery Lane. Welcome, Avery.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Can you just give a very brief introduction, let people know about you and the work that you're doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I am a soul activator, a spiritual mentor, and a global thought leader. I know so much to bite on, but essentially, what that means is I help people and guide people into living and aligning more with their true soul self. So, changing and healing through the ways that they're currently operating and existing in the world to putting in practices, awareness, and tools in place for them to live a higher lifestyle that's more geared towards what their soul self wants versus what their wounded aspects or trauma aspects of self have been living in.
So today we're really going to be discussing healing, personal growth, and transformation. And based on everything you just told us, you're really the perfect person, I think, to have on the podcast and to kick things off. So, one of the things that I always like to ask people, I've talked to a lot of people that are life coaches and even more people that are really focused on spirituality. And a lot of people either had a series of events or sometimes just experienced one event that kind of pushed them into like this aha moment where this is what I should be doing. There's no question about it. I'm just going to move forward. This is my life path. And so I'm curious, what exactly was it that moved you into this space to help heal people and be in service to others?
Yeah, so great question. A lot of people that are going through their awakening journey, something big, something dramatic, usually impacts them to realize, oh my gosh, this is not the life that I want to be living, that I should be living. I need to switch gears completely. And so a little bit of that happened for me, and the fact that I've always been a healer in a way, a hands on healer. So I started my career in life as a firefighter, paramedic, and went into the nursing industry thinking I want to help people. I know that I'm here to help them, heal them, just in a very hands-on kind of 3D way, right? The very materialistic way of fixing them. And my event that happened to me is I was actually driving home after a shift in um, after working a 48-hour shift on the fire department, and I was driving home, and my house was about an hour and 20 minutes away from where this department was. It was raining. I couldn't see in front of me. I wasn't tired because I got a well-rested night the night before, but all of a sudden the brake lights in front of me on the highway went on, and I put on my brake lights, and next thing I knew, I was spinning 360 over and over and again, and I was hydroplaning. So, long story short, in that moment, I felt, and I can't make this up. This isn't make believe. I didn't black out. It wasn't me in shock, but I literally felt these massive hands and wings like of an angel grab my car, and it continued to throw me, and I flipped upside down, and where my windshield should have landed, my trunk landed, and that was into a huge boulder. So, of course, that jolted me, right? That was my awakening. And from there, everything just started to unravel and saying, yes, you're a healer, but you're not supposed to be hands on. Yes, you're a healer, but stop destroying your body, lifting patients and caring for people while also really suffering and draining your own energy. So, I was guided into you need to start healing and helping people this way inside of their emotional spaces, their mental spaces, their spiritual spaces before it hits that impact of physical detriment, right? So we all hear the sayings of where dis-ease is literally just dis-eased energy in the body, right? And just illness is just energy that has manifested into the physical form because we've ignored all the signs, all these symptoms, all of the red flags that our soul and spirit have been trying to tell you. You need to pay attention to this or it's going to really impact you. And the only way that we can get your attention is through causing physical suffering. And so, not to go off on a tangent, but that was my experience. That was my journey. I thought I was on the right path until I was really clearly showing you are, but we need to completely shift the way that you're healing and you're providing service to others.
Um, so, one of the things that you do in your work, and this is also on your website, is you have an ascension map. And I'm really curious about that. I know what ascension means to me, and a lot of people are talking about ascension now. I would like to hear just a little bit about what purpose the ascension map serves, and for people who work with you and who are using an ascension map, how can it benefit them in their daily life?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this concept too because I know a lot of people are talking about ascension right now. Um, and they're making it seem like it's this far out concept that you need to be living in a Buddhist temple and meditating 8 hours a day in order to experience and achieve when that just simply isn't true. So, what I'm here to do and what my mission is to cut the preconceived notions, cut out the fads and the, far out ideas of reaching ascension and making it really accessible and understandable to our everyday people because we are human. We get to have this human experience, but we also really are a soul, and our soul wants to learn and grow and just be the best type of human that we can be, right? Because that's what we're here in this lifetime. So when I talk about ascension and when I really want to get it across to anyone and everyone who wants to listen to it, who's intrigued by it, I really want to start with ascension basically is being able to access, be aware, and completely comprehend different states of consciousness, consciousness in how we're acting, how we're moving throughout life, how we're making choices, how our mind is working, how our soul is leading us. And so ascension is all of these aspects of us coming together to continue to heal and awaken and access different states of our conscious understanding of this human experience, of our soul's experience, and then, of course, other realms that are out there as well.
Yeah, it's funny how you talk about spirituality and misconception. And in this day and age, there's so many people exploring it. And I think COVID was like this massive catalyst, right? Because people, especially people that are in major metropolitan areas, they were stuck in their homes with their computers and the internet. A lot of people didn't even have pets or friends, and they were just by themselves living in fear. And they started resorting to internet groups, YouTube, and really waking up. And so in a way there was this big silver lining with COVID because people were able to explore and start finding all this esoteric information, texts from thousands of years ago that we haven't had access to. But the big misconception is that you need to have those texts. You don't. I think people hear about spirituality and mysticism, and like you said, like they think they have to go off to the Himalayas and climb to a mountaintop and find some etching in a cave somewhere. And it's not like that, because I think, at least my opinion, is that every one of us has what we need inside of us already. So no one needs any special information to access that, only the will and the drive and the time to start working towards that. So because you have the ascension map, and we're talking a little bit about what ascension is, I think a lot of people aren't even aware that maybe there's an ascension of consciousness happening. But for people who are and have heard about it, what are one or two things that they can do to kind of start ascending, to get on this map, so to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the point that you brought up where we don't have to climb into the Himalayas and find the etching on the wall, that it's already within us, right? And so yes, COVID was a silver lining to that. There's so many conspiracies of like it was meant to happen, God source universe, like it was like you need to go inwards, right? So it is all inside of us. It is all inwards. We do need tools to help us remember or reawaken to these aspects of us. So this is where I love to come into play and where I really, really am excited of helping my mentors, my mentorees that come into my space, my students, my clients, is to start accessing the knowledge that they already have inside of us. So I'll talk about the ascension map that you're pointing out that's on my website. And what that simply means is there are different levels to our ascension, and the areas that I love to help guide and assist my clients and my students into remembering and reawakening that part of them. So we have the first level, which is called becoming. And this is becoming our soul self, where we take the first 2 months together to dive into who we've been thus far inside of our human experiences. What stories have we been through? What traumas have we experienced? How has all of this led us and built us and prepared us for the journey that we're about to take inside a soul experience? And so when we can start coming from that place, we can start healing the stories that have happened to us or have happened for us. We can start making a really conscious choice of how we want to rewire, reprogram, and begin operating in new ways. So, in the Ascension map, that's part of the becoming experience. So, we take the first 2 months to just rehash everything that you've been through. I call it the rear view mirror, right? The rear view mirror is in our car. It's small, it's not big, it's just a small window that we need to see what's back there. We don't have to go back there and relive it all, but we just need to see what's back there so we can continue moving forward towards our windshield, towards our visions, towards our goals. And then in that becoming journey, the rest of the 3 months is really teaching you how to start accessing your own energetics, your own feeling, your own intuitive insights, how to start working with your physical field, your emotional field, your mental field, your spiritual field. We have different layers of our field and our body, and how we can work with them for them to support us in living a higher minded lifestyle, living a lifestyle that is reaching that different levels of conscious understanding and connectivity to all of us in oneness, all of us in individuality, and of course, living out the reality around us. So that's the first layer in the ascension map. The second one is ascended soul, where we get really deep into the energetics, learn how to not only access the energy, but begin to start working with the alchemizing and transmuting, you know, different areas of our lives, start programming different codes into our soul selves. So I don't want to get too woo woo and too out here, but there's so much we can do and so much untapped potential in our own soul experience and our own energetic fields that I love to teach people how to take it in bite-sized manners and start applying it to their life so they can master their life. They can, be the creator of their reality, and they no longer have to sit in these victim stories or these external circumstances to define them.
You're doing a lot of really deep inner work for yourself and, of course, helping other people. You mentioned earlier, so you were an emergency responder. Is that what
Yeah.
you were doing before? And so you were helping people with like external wounds, and now you're moving towards internal wounds,
Mhm.
and they're so different. But how do they? I mean, what do you find to be the more difficult? What was more stressful or difficult? Because it seems like with a wound, that work was quicker, right? It could be intense and fast, but the work you're doing now, I mean, it's deep work, and it takes. I mean, it takes time. It can take years. I mean, really, it can take a lifetime because we never really stop working, right? Everybody's on like a soul journey, and we're here learning and exploring and experiencing growth. So I was just curious the difference or contrast between those two.
Yeah, we never stop working, and healing is not linear. It's not just a point that we get to and say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to sit back. No, it's a journey of a lifetime and lifetimes after lifetime. So, to answer your question, to be honest with you, probably being a first responder and being in that very high stress, high impact, high trauma environment was a lot more difficult. Yes, I can patch up the wound right away, but it took so much of someone's experience to get to that massive impact that it had on their lives. This can all be prevented in some way, shape, or form. You can prevent, the circumstances that led you into getting into that fight if you would have just worked on yourself, on your emotional empowerment, on controlling and mastering the way that you react and respond to the world around you. So even though it was, even though trauma is immediately shortly lived, it lasts and lingers the whole rest of your life. And a lot of people that get to that, that that high trauma environment, they're not doing the work, and they're not going to do the work because this is where they're so deeply ingrained in living in this, detrimental, lower vibrational density lifestyle, to leading them to, putting themselves in more dangerous situations. So the longer work, yes, it's absolutely doing the work of tapping into and healing through your crap, healing through your stuff, through your stories, through your experiences, so you don't have to get into that, massive traumatic situation. If it were me, and I don't want to get gruesome, I'd rather die a peaceful death knowing that I led myself, I held myself, I loved myself, versus this very quick traumatic death of a situation that I put myself in. So not to get gruesome or anything, but what path
Hmm.
in life do you want to take is what it comes down to.
I'll tell you the path I want to take, and I think about it on occasion. Please take me in my sleep. I just want to, when is the end? I just want to go. Like, that has to be the highest and best way that you can go. Take me in my sleep, peaceful. Um, so you've learned a lot. You've gone through a lot of growth, and I don't know if you've always been a spiritual person. You definitely had an awakening and a moment when you were hydroplaning and in that car accident. All the things that you know now, if you were able to go back and tell yourself these things, um, like, how do you think that the knowledge you have now would have impacted you earlier on? What would you tell yourself?
This is such a great question. Because as much as we look in that little rearview mirror, I don't really go back into these situations of what if, or I should have, or woulda, right? I don't want to should all over the place. But I love this question because I have kind of always been a spiritual being, right? I grew up in a very, like, I was born and raised Catholic. I grew up in a Christian lifestyle. I was introduced nuggets of spiritualism and spirituality and esoteric teachings at age 10, but I chose at that time to ignore them. And I knew I kept having these soul nudges. And I talk about soul nudges quite often, but I kept having these soul nudges of, well, maybe if you just looked into this, maybe if you weren't afraid, maybe if fear didn't take place, or the teachings of, religious backgrounds, if they didn't like override your soul knowing, maybe if we would have dug into that or allowed that to be true back then, our life would look completely different. But it's
Hmm.
okay because I loved my life that I experienced, and everything that I've gone through, the hardships, the heartaches, the heartbreaks, right? They all needed to happen so I can understand what it meant to be in those moments and how to deeply lead my clients, my students, my mentorees that come into my life that are experiencing these things. Because if it wasn't for these teachings, if it wasn't for these traumatic environments that I've been, if it wasn't for the heartbreaks that I've experienced, I wouldn't be able to lead others authentically and with integrity because I needed to be in those situations. So, not once, not ever will I victimize where I should have been or what I should have listened to, because I actually really needed those, and my soul knew, just because she gave me these nuggets, just because she gave me these, insights, she knew I needed to experience a certain things in my life that I experienced.
I love how you answered that. I've thought about how I would answer that question. And really, I have the same philosophy, right? Every moment, every traumatic event, all of it has been catalyst. All of it has been growth opportunity. And that's really how I view life. Even this morning, I had something happen and I started to kind of lose it. And it's like, I need to go in my bedroom for 5 minutes. I just need to breathe. I need to let all this stress, all this tension out. But if one thing in my past happened differently than it did, I don't think I'd be where I am now. And I have a beautiful family, two young kids. You talk about rear view mirrors. Usually what I see in the rear view mirror are like raisins and Doritos flying behind behind my head because the kids are both in the back seat. But yeah, so that was really a great answer. And also, since I just touched on the word philosophy leading into my next question, you have a philosophy. This sounds like a Buddhist philosophy where you talk about the embodied path. Can you go a little bit into detail about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, the embodied path means to really take everything that we've learned together, take all of our awarenesses, all of our understandings, and practice new ways of being. The embodied path is our embodied outcome, everything that we've been practicing, healing, and working through, integrating into our wholeness. The embodied path equals the blissful state, the embodiness of our greatness, the embodiness of our highest and best design. So, my embodied path really aligns with living heaven on earth because we all get to experience pleasure and play. And that all comes through practicing the embodiment of who we want to be versus leaning into those victim stories, choosing to create a life that is not aligned with our highest and best designs. So, my philosophy is the embodied path, and each and every individual that I work with, our end goal, right? If we were to talk about end goals, is starting to really deeply enter into aligning and seeing the embodied path in their reality.
Mentioning heaven on earth, I live in the South, and so it's very religious here. And I'm not going to knock religion because I definitely think it serves its purpose and has helped a lot of people. But when we talk about heaven on earth, it sounds like it means exactly the same thing to you that it means to me. I mean, it's really a state of mind and a state of being, and that's how I experience it. And I've experienced hell and heaven. I mean, I've experienced all of them. And like I mentioned earlier, when I had to go into my room to relax this morning, I could have gotten really into my head and I could have created that lower vibration state that could have carried through the day. And I absolutely did not want to carry that into this interview, but that's kind of how it works. And so I laid down and consciously said, I want to experience heaven. I want to feel positive. I want to feel love. I walked out into the main area of the house and I kissed my wife. I kissed my son on the head, kissed the puppy, like everyone. I was like, all right, this stops here. I'm in control of it.
Mm.
And a lot of people give up their power and control and they blame it on external circumstances or maybe on God or spirit or whatever one wants to call it. Well, when we spoke earlier this week, one of the things that I was mentioning, and of course, because you're my first interview, I'm not exactly sure who will be watching this podcast. I believe it will be men. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm taking a journey where I'm exploring information and having guests on that I believe can help me in my journey. And right now, I'm at a point in my life where I'm trying to open up and balance out my masculine and feminine energies. Uh, you know, as far as like the masculine, sure, I'm great at like projecting out and you know, putting my will out there onto the world. With manifestation, great. I can conjure up different thoughts and ideas and concepts and signal those out. Where I have a more difficult time is being a little softer, surrendering and opening up to receive. And so we talked about masculine energy. And a big reason I have you on here is because you represent the feminine energy, but you work with a lot of men.
Mhm.
And so, do you have any tips for like how a man who might be a little bit shy about exploring these topics or even talking about these topics? Because sometimes a man could be viewed as being soft just for even talking about manifestation or something like that. Do you have any tips for like how a man can kind of balance those energies?
Yeah. So it's funny you're using man and female. And yes, though they are very gender oriented, they're not, right? We have a masculine presence and a feminine presence, and it's all energetic. So I work with a lot of men. I also work with a lot of females that have heavy, heavy masculine energy. I myself lead with a masculine energy presence. It's just who I was born into this lifetime as, was just this masculine heavy presence, right? I've had to teach myself along with the male clients that come with to me, along with the female clients that come to me with this heavy, heavy masculine energy, how to start balancing it. But not just balancing it, but accepting this is who we are. This is why we're leading this way. Here are the ways we can soften. Here are the ways we can come into receiving. Here are the ways we can also really honor who we are. So I'll talk about bringing in that masculine, bringing in that feminine. There's a point where on our own, we can explore softening. We can explore opening ourselves up to more love and more compassion. And that comes with practice, right? Compassion is not for the weak hearted. It's one of my sayings, and it's not for the weak hearted
Hmm.
or the meek minded, because compassion is truly a catalyst for our change. When we feel like we just want to respond or react to that road rage situation or that angry conversation with just, shooting it right back to them, if we can come from a place of compassion, we're actually empowering ourselves and we're not giving our energy away to that situation external from us. So, the biggest tips that I have for any type of man or masculine energy that wants to start coming into the feminine is number one, where are you being compassionate in your life to yourself, to others, to your environment, to your circumstances? Where are you leading with love, right? Versus with that, overpowering strength? And where are you trying to kind of compensate, really? Because maybe you are this soft man that does have emotions, that is a little more sensitive and emotionally connected, but you don't want the world to see that. You don't want to come off as weak. However,
Hmm.
that's your true nature. So are you overcompensating and trying to be strong, trying to be dominant, trying to be forceful, when that's not your true nature and that doesn't feel good within? Even in my own relationship, I'm with a very strong masculine man who's very in touch with his feminine side. But he was raised by all women, right? So he was raised how to really be emotionally connective, hold space, listen, and just be this strong anchor. So being feminine doesn't mean you have to be weak, you have to be emotional all the time. It just means you're holding space and you're allowing, yourself to feel in different ways. You're allowing yourself to be that anchor while all these emotions are flailing around within ourselves. And I don't want to get too many directions here, but within ourselves, we all have masculine and feminine energies. So my comparison is masculine energy is the riverbanks, right? Is the structure that we set up to our life. And the feminine energy is what flows in between those river banks. So inside of yourself, where are you letting yourself have structure? And where are you letting yourself kind of flow and go with the flow and be at ease in areas of your life, if that connects and that makes sense to you?
That definitely connects with me. And so while I go by JD, which is what all my friends call me, my name is actually Jordan. And so I was named after the Jordan River. So I definitely connect with what you're saying. And yet when I bring up the masculine and feminine to people, especially like some of my close friends, immediately everyone thinks that I'm discussing gender. And gender has nothing to do with it. Like you said, it's just energy. And it's just different states of energy. So hopefully there are several men listening to the podcast that will take something away from what you just said. I know it's been a pain point for me in my life. I always feel like I have to be out there helping everyone else, taking care of everyone else. And sometimes I do just want to like surrender and let someone help me. And that's hard. That's hard for a lot of men, especially men that are in positions where they're taking care of other people or responsible for children. Uh, so thank you for that. I'm not very familiar with this term. What is bioluminescence?
Oh, it's an energy grid within inside of ourselves. So I'm actually going to tie it back to our light body. Before, when I talked about different levels of energy bodies, right? We actually have 7 layers of our energy bodies. And the first 4 that I work with are the most impactful for our lives, our daily lives, how we really exist in the world, in the reality around us. So we have our physical, we have our emotional, we have our mental, and we have our spiritual. And in between that, we have just different little energy fields. So our bioluminescence is this light body, is this body that surrounds all of the bodies that we can start receiving from, right? Where we can start connecting to ourselves and to others in the world around us. So bioluminescence, or our light body, is the body of oneness. It's the body of the universe. It's the body of connecting to our individuality, our reality, our spirituality, and the oneness of the world. So that's where that term comes in.
Okay.
But for those that are just starting out, I don't even want them to focus on all that. I want them to focus on these first four bodies, because once we can start connecting and understanding what's happening in these first fours, the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, then we can start expanding into all of the other crazy, beyond the beyond conscious experiences and understandings.
Disassociation. I
Mhm.
know you've spoken about that, and that's something that's very prevalent right now, especially given the amount of medication that people are on. More particularly, I mean, it was already rampant, but post COVID, so many people are on medication, but you also have people that are exploring with all kinds of different psychedelics. And with those, you can experience disassociation, depersonalization. I myself have experienced that before, and it's scary. And so for people who become disassociated, maybe you can even explain just a little bit about what it is to be disassociated. And then how can people, if they're feeling this way, how can they get grounded? What are some steps that they can kind of take to get grounded and come into themselves again?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this really, really simply. Disassociation is basically our soul, our spirit is popped out of our body. It is not here, right? It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel welcome. It doesn't feel like it has a home inside of our physical vessel. So that's when the physical self of us and the soul self of us completely disassociate. They completely separate, right? This can happen through trauma environments, SA experiences, not completely ever being able to love or feel comfortable in our own skin, our own body, to these psychedelics, to medications. Our soul is just basically like, hey, you got to clean some energy up, some space up. You got to clean some dirtiness up in that body so I can come in and lead you. That's what disassociation really is on the simplest terms. It's not as scary as it sounds. Your soul is always with you. It's on a tether. It's always here. It just isn't always in our body. So disassociation can be from the simplest fact of um, it doesn't feel safe in our body, so it's just going to pop out. Or we're operating from our very unconscious mind, and our soul is just like, I'm going to let you do you until you want me to come back in. And the ways that we can begin to no longer disassociate or completely integrate our soul into our body is one, doing the work, understanding why doesn't our soul feel safe in our body? Why doesn't it feel comfortable? What do we need to heal, work on inside of our physical and emotional fields so that our soul can come in and can continue to be the leader versus our wounded inner child leading or our ego leading, or aspects of us that are not integrated into our wholeness, leading our life from places that we don't really want them to be leading from, right? We want to be leading in consciousness. We want to be leading in, um, full power of what we're creating in our life from instead of just running on the autopilot. So some ways you can start doing that is begin to look at why don't you feel safe in your environment? What has led you to disassociate, or you start using those medications, or using those drugs? What are you trying to escape? Because your soul is also trying to escape whatever this reality experience is that you're existing in. And then we can start calling soul back into the body and getting used to what it feels like for soul to be in and present with us. We can ground. Of course, we can always ground. We can do self love and self forgiveness techniques, right? Self love doesn't just mean going to the spa and getting your nails done, something super girly. It means literally, how do I love myself? How do I respect myself and care about myself, right? So these are different things that we can start to do to, stop disassociating and start becoming whole, start becoming one, letting our soul lead us.
In my experience, the one time it happened to me, I really needed to work on grounding. And I went outside, I would sit on the ground. I was eating certain foods, like heavier foods that I enjoyed, but
Mhm.
chocolate. Uh, I find that one of the things that a lot of people do, especially people that come from like spiritual circles and are living that type of a lifestyle is they start to meditate. But I found that, and in my research also it confirmed this, you need to be very careful about certain types of meditation. Sometimes people will be experiencing like depersonalization, disassociation. They start to get into like a Kriya meditation or something that's affecting the Kundalini and the chakras. And because what's happening is related to an energetic imbalance in the body, they're actually creating more energy. And it's almost like when you stop up a toilet, right? All of that water, everything has to go somewhere else and it just gets backed up and can really kind of throw you off even more. So that was one of the things that I was very careful. Like I was doing inner work, but I didn't want to get into any kind of breathing techniques or things that were going to amplify that energy. Um, you mentioned a tether. And so I've heard talk of that tether. I've never seen the tether, but I hear, because I listen to a lot of near death
Mhm.
experiences, and a lot of experiencers, they talk about a silver cord. And is that the same thing that you're talking about? Like, I don't completely understand how that works. I don't know if you can shed a little bit of light on that.
Yeah, so it's very much the same thing that I'm talking about. The experiences that you're referring to are very astral body experiences, right? So that's part of our light body. The astral body is popping out of the physical body and going places, right? And so our soul is doing very much the same thing, but it's not going places per se. It's just not in our physical denser layers of our experience. So it is very much the same. It's just what you're talking about is a very astral experience where you're floating off into different realms, different dimensions, different timelines, different parallel realities, right? We could get into all of that, but let's not, just for the sake of our listeners' brains
Mhm.
not exploding today. But yes, it's very much the same. Our soul is on a tether. It's connected to us, right? When we perish, when we pass away, that tether releases because it's not going to hang on to an empty vessel, right? Our vessel full of life and full of moving organs. It's going to, tether. That tether will disconnect when we perish. But when we're very much alive and we're very much connected, that tether won't disconnect. It's always with us. So we don't have to worry about the disconnection of it. And again, I really like how you emphasized, don't look externally, don't look outward, don't bring in these kriyas, don't bring in these meditations. Meditate within yourself, right? Meditate in that grounding, in that journaling, in that just, self reflection state. Don't bring in external sources that is going to over supercharge or cloud us even more when we're trying to heal, simplify, and become very present in the moment and not disconnected in the moment.
You talk about intuitive eating, and that's something that I talk about, like high vibrational eating. And it's not exactly what it sounds like, because when people hear that, they think, oh, I have to eat leafy greens and nuts and seeds and be raw and crunchy. And that's not what it means, at least when I'm speaking about it. And I'd love to hear your aspect and how you help people with intuitive eating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, that's not what I refer to either when I'm speaking about it. So I'm glad that we're on the same page there. I come from my own personal experience of being disassociated with my body. Coming as a soul into this body in this lifetime, it does not feel comfortable to be constricted, right? My soul is like, I just want to play, I just want to expand, I just want to grow. And so my entire life, I've always had, a physical vessel that's been yo-yoing up and down, shameful, and just really disconnected. And it wasn't until I started learning how to call my soul back into my body, love who I am, and begin to nourish my vessels in the way that felt best for me, did I really start connecting and like loving who I am, right? Being able to say, my soul belongs here and we do get to play, we do get to expand because we're one together. So when it comes to eating, um, I will come from my past relationship, which was a 7-year relationship with a bodybuilder who was very like strict diet, same thing, chicken and rice, chicken and rice. And that just felt so limiting. And you would think that someone on that diet or was put on that type of meal plan would, just be the most shredded, in shape woman that you met. And instead, I gained weight. I was super unhealthy. I looked like a skeleton in the face, and the rest of me was just all puffy and weird because I wasn't really tapping into what I needed to nourish me. So I learned, just like you did in various ways, that intuitive eating has nothing to do with following a strict meal plan of chicken and rice and the best, healthiest organic greens on this earth, and everything to do with how do I nourish my soul? How do I nourish my body? What does nourishment look like for me? Maybe today it looks like a bowl of big leafy greens. Maybe tomorrow it looks like being able to have that slice of pizza while also really loving and enjoying that. Because the way my brain chemicals are working, the way my saliva glands are working, I'm going to digest that completely and fully with the mindset behind it. There's a great there's a great person on Instagram, and I would love to give you his information, but he speaks really deeply on this, just so I can um it's called the Panda Man Official. And it wasn't until I started connecting and following him where he said, it doesn't really matter what you put in your body. What matters is, are you enjoying it? Are you loving it? Are you stressing out over eating those extra calories, which is going to store as fat versus burn as fuel? So when we talk about intuitive eating, it means tapping into, what do you need? What do you need to feel full, fulfilled, nourished, loved, and healthy? And for each and every individual, that's going to look completely different. That's your journey with your soul. That's your journey with your body, and really respecting and loving this vessel that you're using in this lifetime to navigate your greatness
Mm.
through.
Yeah, I mean, food and music, especially food, can really create so many happy memories. When you think about, I mean, even if you just watch TV, right? You watch guys like Andrew Zimmern and Anthony Bourdain, and you watch when they go dine with people from other cultures and how they can appreciate a meal and the togetherness that it brings. They can really be used to aid us in having beautiful moments in life. And I'll give you a great example. So my oldest of the two boys, he came in to his body with just the most unique musical taste. That's a whole nother discussion that we could get into, and maybe sometime on another podcast we'll go there. But he's obsessed with Kiss and Queen and David Bowie, and I like all of those groups, but they're not things that I listen to very often. And it's all he wants to listen to. And so Kiss is about to do their final world tour. Actually, they're already doing the world tour. They're on a 3-week break. Then they're going to get started back up in Knoxville. And then the final week, they'll finish it in Madison Square Garden. I bought tickets because I know that he's 5. He will remember the experience for the rest of his life. And for 2 months, all he's been talking about is that he's going to get to drink a Coca-Cola before the concert. And he doesn't really get to drink Coke. And he's never had his own like whole soda. And so that's what I mean by high vibrational. You know, there are different ways that you can eat high vibrational, but my son for the rest of his life is going to associate me with that moment of going and getting a Coca-Cola, going and watching Kiss. And I hope, I'm a little older, I'm 48. So I hope that I'm around to be a grandfather, but I also hope that he can experience moments like this with his kids. And like that's what that really is all about for me. So I'm glad that you talk about that, because I hear so many people and I see so many influencers on YouTube and Twitter. There's like all this guilt. I mean, the big thing now is I see these guys that they go to the grocery store and they'll hold up the almond milk. Oh, it has this, this, and this. And by the time you're done watching these guys, you can't do anything except for like eat raw meat and drink water.
Yeah, or be a
Like
breatharian, because
it's
even meat has glue in it or something. So,
right. It's just wild. And I want to enjoy my life. I know so many people who've lived into their 80s and 90s and they were just absolutely miserable. And That's no way to live. Have fun. I'd rather have a lively, exciting life doing some of the things within reason that I enjoy. I guess I'm kind of losing my track with the with the point I was trying to make here, but I think that we should all indulge in things that make us happy and raise our energy. It's just better for us, and it's better for everyone else around us.
Yeah, absolutely. Our experience in life is everything, whether it be conversations we have or the people that we even choose to engage with, right? Is it draining us or is it fulfilling us? The foods we eat, the places we go, and the way we spend our free time. Again, is it draining us or is it fulfilling us?
And I love how this conversation's flowing because this is leading right into my next question. Because you talk about people pleasers.
Mhm.
My whole life, I was a people pleaser, and I worked in the hospitality industry and in restaurants. Uh, and so I guess this all really ties in the food. And so I was a people pleaser, and I my whole life would put other people's feelings before my own. And finally, I woke up and said, I have to take care of myself. I have to empower myself and be okay with who I am and love and respect who I am before taking care of other people. And now I can reflect back on what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I viewed it as there's like a major lesson that I needed to learn on this journey from all of that. And it helped me grow into and blossom into where I am now. What advice do you have for people who are still stuck in that mode of being a people pleaser? And you also talk about burning bridges. So like if you're a people pleaser, what do you do? When is it time to start burning some bridges that you may need to kind of end so that you can move forward in life?
Yeah, this is great. I actually literally just posted yesterday about a series that I'm going to start releasing segments from. I have a leadership certification that I teach others how to set boundaries. So I'm going to post this on my Instagram and I'll mark it as one of those story highlights. So if anyone wants to go and look at the story highlights segments of how to cut out being the people pleaser, set up those boundaries, still be really true to your authentic, loving, wholehearted happiness self while not draining or dimming your light and your capacity, you can absolutely go to my Instagram into that highlight and begin to watch little segments of this entire leadership certification that I teach. So boundaries first and foremost, right? We have to talk about why are we the people pleaser? Our whole lives have been filled with pleasing people left and right. It comes from childhood. Yes, it absolutely comes from childhood. Who was the first person that we put their needs above our own? Who did we value over ourselves? Who did we always try to fix and please for that validation? And everything we do is going to come full circle of it comes from that stemming of childhood. And how are we still operating and acting out those ways of pleasing individuals, maybe that initial individual or others, with the same type of relationship connections, with the same type of energy connections that we had with that initial individual, and just kind of allowed it to start being our MO, the way we operate in the world, is putting others above ourselves, is looking for validation outside of ourselves, right? So, what is your vice to that people pleaser? And how can we begin to heal that? And I talk about healing in a very physical, mental, and reality way. In our side of our reality, how are we setting that boundaries? Are we going to actually think about being that people pleaser before we just allow it to blurt out of our unconscious mind, right? It's bringing in that consciousness to it again. Here we go, talking about consciousness, right? It's very accessible to all people, all layers of consciousness we can start obtaining and practicing and embodying from. So, talking about this people pleaser, setting these boundaries, understanding we need to start having awareness, we need to start practicing new ways so we are no longer, you know, diving right back into pleasing others and, building that resentment or showing ourselves that we're not as worthy or we're not as valuable if we don't have the external validations. So there's so many steps we can do inside of people pleasing. But when does it come time to burning the bridges? That was your second question to this. It's when we can start building the confidence that we have everything we need inside of ourselves. we have the internal validation. We're not seeking externally for it. We know that we're worthy. We know that we are valid in our thinking and our emotions and in the way we present ourselves to the world. So we get to really choose, who do we want to have around us that is going to lead us to our betterment, or is going to continue creating detrimental impact to our life in ways that we don't want to experience any longer. We don't have to be mean when burning bridges. We don't have to call names. We don't have to get into big fights. Burning bridges can simply mean just closing that door and really upholding our own worth, upholding that boundary that we set, because this is our new way of fulfilling ourselves mentally, emotionally, energetically, and seeing how much more is out there for us, the people that want to support us, the people that want to love us and add value to our lives versus take and drain and just suck the life out of us.
We're getting closer to the end of the podcast, and I have one question, and this can be really simple, really quick things for the people that are listening. And maybe you can just draw on like your own experience and things that you do as daily practices. What are three like very simple techniques that people can practice daily that will help them with their own personal growth?
Yeah. So my routine changes as my levels of ascension change, right? So as I reach different levels of my own soul and spiritual ascension journey, the things that I need to support me change. But if we're first starting out, the first three things I really want you to do is create that morning routine. This is the connection between you and your soul self, between you and your higher guidance, right? God, source, universe, higher self, all of the things. This is the very first thing I want you to do in the morning is find that internal source of dopamine, right? Other instead of opening up your phone and scrolling right away or getting into that conversation, picking up the phone and starting our day talking to someone, how are you taking time to spend, nurture, and start fulfilling yourself internally? That's the first thing, very first thing in the morning. Secondly, is expanding that light in the body, right? How are we moving our body? How are we expanding our light? How are we bringing actual movement, embodiment into our body? So we are having awareness of how we're impacted throughout the day. And then the third thing that I always tell people to do, it seems really simple, but the consistency is the key here, is creating that evening gratitude, reflecting on the day, thinking about the things you're grateful for. This is going to start rewiring and reprogramming your brain from complaining and just completely disassociating and ignoring and disconnecting from you, your mission, your purpose, and how you want to be a better human and, be led by your soul self versus just folding into your, subconscious, unconscious programming. I will tell you right now, 90% of the world's population, 90% of us live our lives on 90% autopilot, meaning we don't have to think about waking up. We don't have to think about brushing our teeth. We don't have to think about going to work. Everything we're doing is just on autopilot. Your life from start to finish is going to be on autopilot until you start creating those disruptors, right? Those things that are, oh, hey, let me actually think about why am I doing this in this order? Whether it's like brushing your teeth and brushing your hair, putting your socks on, putting your pants on, bringing in these small little practices of awareness are going to start shifting your mind so you can start kind of rewiring. All right, let me be a lot more intentional about my day, about the way that I'm creating it, the way I'm moving through it, the way I'm reacting and responding to it, to the conversations that I'm having. Why am I reacting and responding that way to this conversation? Does that serve me? Is that something I want to keep doing? Or do I want to try practicing a different approach? So these would be the first things that I would tell you to do. These are how we start kind of like tripping up the programming that's in our operating system, right? Think about an old computer. It has a program that it's running. We got to update that internal program. We got to trip the wires of that program so we can build a bigger and better program, one that supports our end goal, one that leads us to living a happy, blissful, embodied path and lifestyle versus the one that is just running on autopilot.
So that's excellent advice. If you do those three things, everyone, I'm telling you, it will transform your life. I wake up every day, 5:30. I have my morning ritual. It also includes meditation, exercise. When I'm done, then I get my kids ready. But the most important thing I do is what you suggested, reprogramming our subconscious. And for any of you who've, because I know a lot of you have read Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, and he talks about auto suggestion. And one of the things that I did, it's a little bit different than what he goes over in the book, but I recorded my life story. And I listen to that 3 times a day. It's the first thing I listen to. It's my life story, who I want to be, but I've written it and I speak it and listen to it as I am. And so I listen to it 3 times a day, no matter what. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I have to stop the kids to listen to it, I will. And it's fine if he might think I'm a little nutty, but my older son, because he's the one that's speaking and can understand what's going on right now, he thinks it's a little weird sometimes, but he's going to learn that habit and then it'll become something that he does. So I love that advice because it's really pretty much the same advice that I would give somebody if I had 3 really quick things to mention. I will be asking all of my guests these 2 questions. I'm a food person, I'm a music person. And a lot of my memories and relationships, they all kind of revolved around those 2 things. And since we talked about high vibration food, using music to manipulate or change our energy, this is where the people that are listening get to know you on a little more of a personal level. And so, one, I would ask you, when you're feeling a little bit down or like more in a negative headspace, what is one piece of music, or it doesn't even have to be music, it could be a podcast. What is one thing that you will listen to help to get you out of that state that you're in?
Yeah. So I learned a long time ago, actually from my ex mother in law. She would put on like worship music, just Christian worship music. And it would totally change. And because I'm very intuitive, right? Very empathic. And before I even knew and was honing in on my intuition and empathic abilities, I could feel the entire environment of the room or the place. She's a realtor. So she would put it on in one of her listings that would be empty. And you could feel the entire place just shift, right? And so I don't, as much as I don't have the religious beliefs, I still am very Christ conscious, right? I still very move through life with the compassion and love that, the ascended master Christ taught us, right? So if I'm feeling down and I need to change the energy and I want some high vibe, uplifting vibrational stuff, it's always that worship music because they're not slandering anyone, they're not talking about hardships. It's always supporting, encouraging, and continuing on. So it sounds different, but that is my go-to. And I feel almost immediately the shift after, one or two songs. I can just feel like, okay, I'm inspired, I'm supported, I'm uplifted, I've got this, let's go.
This is such a weird synchronicity because what I listened to this morning, and I'm not Christian, my family's not Christian, we're not religious, uh,
Mhm.
but one of my favorite albums since I was a child, and I loved the movie or the musical, is Jesus Christ Superstar. So this morning I got in the truck and I was taking my son to school and I put on Jesus Christ Superstar. And he said, Daddy, why are you listening to this? And he loves it too. He has a little guitar and he runs around. He's like, Jesus, Jesus. He's just screaming Jesus out. And so I put it on. He's like, well, why do you love this? And I said, I don't know. It just makes me feel good. It's because they're singing about Jesus. I said, I mean, actually, no, it's not really because they're singing about Jesus, but it's a positive. I guess it depends on how you look at it, but it's a positive vibe. It's a positive story. Ultimately, yeah, there are all kinds of atrocities that happen throughout the story, but it's a positive story. Anything else I put on, like he loves death metal.
Mhm.
And sometimes in the mornings we're driving to school and I just want to listen to something to get me into a better mood. And he's like, put on Sepultura. I'm like, I'm going to be ready to rip someone's head off when we're driving home, man. Uh, so yeah, that's funny that you say that because I listened to that same type of music this morning to lift myself out of my mood. I mean, and I guess throughout this episode, for anyone listening, you can hear I had to take several steps today to flip my energy, and so it's not that easy. It takes work.
Mhm.
Um, so my last question, we did the music, food. Like, what's just one go-to thing that instantly it makes you feel better. Could be a meal, it could just be one thing.
Okay. It is definitely a tie between just Italian pasta and sushi. So I don't even care if they're together. Actually, it's really
Hmm.
weird. I like sushi and French fries together. It sounds so weird, but it's such a good combination. But Italian, it helps me ground, right? I'm a Taurus too, so I'm very earthy and um, I can, be up and high in my spiritual realms and out in different cosmic places, but what really grounds me and brings me here and just makes me feel all warm and fluffy is Italian food.
I get it because I'm Italian. I'm also Taurus. When's your birthday?
April 22nd.
Okay, I'm May 12th.
I'm Earth.
And then my
Yeah, I'm
youngest,
I'm on Earth Day. So
mhm. Oh, is that Earth Day?
yeah.
That's a cool day to be born on. Yeah, my youngest son, he's May 14th. And so on May 12th, I asked for that gift of this be my birthday present. So my wife actually went into labor on May 12th, but it was a complicated situation. And so he didn't come until May 14th. Before we leave, do you have any last points, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that what's the most important is if you're just hearing about this for the first time, or these are soul nudges and that you're getting over and over and over again to say it's time to do something. It's time to create a different life for yourself. I just want to encourage you to make that choice for yourself and take that first step. That first step is the hardest, but if you can take that first step, and then the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, and see that the consistency and commitment to yourself in creating a completely different and better reality for yourself, you're going to see it's worth it. You're going to see everything that JD and I are talking about inside of our lifestyles actually is true, is factual. You just have to take the steps, have that commitment for yourself, and lean into the support. So whether you want to hire a mentor or a life coach like myself, or have JD and his resources as well, all we do is encourage you to take those steps so that you can be led, you can be held, because you are so worthy and deserving of the support and experiencing a different reality than the one that you're currently living in. Even if the one you're living in is great and aligned, why not make it even better? Why not take it even further? And that's what we're here to just encourage you and support you on. So thank you for allowing me to be here today to share, to invite you into my space, whether you want to come into any mentorships or courses, paced study courses or programs that I host. I just invite you to use your resources and utilize them, and wish you such an amazing journey in life in this lifetime.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. I think that both of us, we're really on the same path. We want to help as many of you as we possibly can. That's my goal in life, and that's all I want to do until I die is help people. And in by doing this podcast, I'm hoping that I can continue to bring people like Avery on. I'm hoping that at some point I'll be able to have you back on because I think there are many other things that we could discuss, but we tried not to stray too far, but this can really open up into a whole nother kind of conversation, which is something I love to talk about in my own personal free time. Uh, Before we're done, please share any of your socials, any links or information where people can find out a little more about you and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so all of my links are super easy. They're all the same. So you can find me on my website at www.averylane, AVERYLANE.co. Okay, there is no M, it's just CO. And then every social, Instagram is averylane.co, Facebook is averylane.co, YouTube and Twitter and what's the other one? TikTok. They're all the same. So you can find me on any socials and my website at averylane.co.
Great. I will make sure that I include all of those links in the show notes. So, everyone,
Cool.
thank you so much for listening to the Fourth Density. And Avery, I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. I loved the conversation. And I really feel like it also kind of helped to loosen me up. And I'm ready to do the next one. I have another one, another interview scheduled on Friday. So thank you. For everyone who's tuned in, please take a moment or two, uh, follow me, leave some comments. If you have anybody or anything you'd like addressed on the show, I would love to hear about it. And make sure you tune in because I'll be doing a weekly podcast. So I look forward to seeing you all soon. Okay. Thanks, and love and light to everyone.